Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome. I just switched us up today. You get to be Corianne, and I will be the wonderful
I feel
Renee.
like I'm in a Brady Bunch episode, or maybe the Twilight Zone. I don't know. It's fun. We got to keep you on your toes over here at Ask the Agent Anything, right?
Yeah, we do. Welcome, anybody. If you're just joining us and this is your first Ask an Agent Anything, my name is Corianne Wright. I am an investor, an agent, an artist, and I'm here with my all-time favorite agent who's been in this industry for 18 years. And like I tell everybody, I'm like, we are always talking anyway. We would be sitting down, having one-on-one chats, me being in the industry for 5 years, her being in the industry for 18. I'm always picking her brain, and we bring you in live to join us. So hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hello,
And thank you
everyone.
for
Hi,
today.
Miss Corianne. It's always good to see you. And I love how you make that introduction because it's true. We would be talking. So it's a bit like having a little kibitz. If you were to come over to our house or join us in a Zoom room, other than being live, you get to sort of peek into our worlds, and hopefully that brings you some value, you the watcher. And then also it just allows us to be better. There's one thing, it's I have some bragging rights for saying I've been at this for now 18 and a half years. It'll be 19 in July. Oh my gosh. Let's not get over twisted. 18 and a half years, and I'm still a life learner. So we've got something today, up our sleeves that keeps me on my toes. Sometimes when people think, God, how can you be doing this after, all this time? It's because you constantly are learning. You never know everything. I know some things, but I don't know everything. And so today we're going to learn, which is going to be so fun.
Yay. And I can tell my internet is going to be a little laggy. So hopefully everybody can hear me while I close some tabs, because that's my biggest issue is
Oh, yeah.
that we're over this quarter in general, we're going to be focused on language and how we approach people and in general scripting. But today we've got something very special. Will you tell the people while I fix my issues, Renee?
I will. So, as Corianne lovingly said, 18 and a half years later, and what do I do to keep myself involved in this business? And as we all know, real estate is a relationship-based business. So when you're in a relationship with anyone, what are you doing? You're communicating, you're using your words, you're using your language to communicate with people. Of course, there's body language, and, we're not going to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but what you most want to do is be engaged with other people. And where do other people live? Other people don't live in our heads. People live out here, right? They live out here outside of us. And so in order to engage, you want to make people the subject matter, so to speak, because we all love talking about ourselves. And so what we're going to do today, Corianne, is talk about emotional intelligence with the book. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Boom. Never Split the Difference. Guys, if you don't have this book, I highly recommend getting this book. And if you own this book, please use it as a study guide. Do not read it once and put it on the shelf. And so we're going to talk about that today. So any quick questions you have for me before I jump on in?
I only have excitement. I am so excited that we're talking and diving into something that you know intimately and well, something that you practice and utilize in your business, but also something that I think, and when I first read it, I'm on my third read of Never Split the Difference, and honestly going to start moving it more to study guide that I pull when I need specific things. But the first time I read it, it was mind blowing as to how what I was saying was creating reactions. And that was a newer time for me, when I was also understanding that much of what I was perceiving was a projection of what was going on for myself. And starting to recognize that that was happening with the people I was speaking to too. Like everything that they were saying about me wasn't always the truth. Sometimes it was the truth about them. And so I like that we're delving into this specifically in business, because I think we're going to blow some people's minds today.
Yeah. And we're going to make this just a little taste test, right? Because I'm going to say a few things that Chris Voss himself said, but let's start with my qualifications. So I have actually been coaching with Chris Voss for the last, I want to say about 4 years, if not a little over 4 years. And so I'm in a coaching program. By the way, I'm of belief that if you can afford it, because it is a pretty penny to have business coaching, but when you can afford it, or if you can afford it, please do afford to get it, because you will constantly be learning as you go. And you'll also have people be able to kind of see how your business is operating. And so another business coach of mine actually works with and kind of collaborates with Chris Voss. And so that's how we got to be in a group amongst ourselves. So this is not a pitch for Chris Voss, but if you don't know who he is, he owns a company called the Black Swan Group. He was the top FBI hostage negotiator for many, many years. And so he understands language, okay? And he took a lot of what he learned and he applied that to emotional intelligence, which he did not invent. But certainly he's made it a little bit more of a business, or almost kind of like household name for those of you who follow him. He's all over the internet, Chris Voss, VOSS, and you can just listen to a lot of his podcasts. And I highly recommend going to the Black Swan Group website and signing up for it, because they send out a lot of free stuff that you can constantly learn from there, because the coaching with him on his own can be quite pricey. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do, for free, so to speak, and not feel like you're just stuck with a book. So the qualifications, and I have my notes here. So if I look down, guys, I usually go off the cuff, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything today. So the qualification is that I have been coaching with Chris Voss for the last 4 years, and in total application of emotional intelligence, the way he teaches it. And a lot of that is in the book. Okay. So why am I not doing, there we go, in the book. And so there's words that I'm going to throw out there, like labels, tactical empathy, accusation audit. These are things that actually Chris made up, but they're talking points on how to learn to speak from an emotionally intelligent place. So what I like to do, though, is, I'm a bit of a wordsmith. And so what is emotional and what is intelligence? And I think that a sign of somebody who's intelligent is humbling yourself. And if you don't quite know the definition of a word, look it up. I'm always looking up definitions of words. And now when you look it up on the internet, there's 3, 4, 5 different books that you can look at, or things online that dictionaries, and stuff like that you can look at to pick the one that you like. So the word emotional, and the definition that I liked, is appealing to or arousing emotion. So you're appealing to something. Okay. Mm-hmm. And intelligence that I liked is an act of understanding. So you're arousing an emotion, and you're in an act of understanding, right? So you're out to really understand where the other person is coming from. Remember what I just said. We like to think people live in our heads, right? Oh, we're thinking about them. We have thoughts about them. That's understood. That's our perception of the other person, but they actually live out here. So be out here with people, be in your head with people. So the active way of engaging with that is really listening to what they are saying. And the emotional intelligent approach is listening behind what they're actually saying. What is the emotion behind what they're actually saying? So, Corianne, can you think of something like, and even in a wholesaler perspective, that maybe somebody's frustrated, and I'll listen behind what it is that you're saying, if we could script for just a second.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you want me to play the person that's frustrated?
You can say something. Yeah, we don't have to go on too much about a whole script, but maybe just something you heard, like an objection or something that you heard recently that you felt like you wanted to react to it.
Hey, I told you that the highest and best value that we could take for this property was $260, and you presented an offer with $220. So this offer is useless. I feel like you've wasted my time.
You are probably getting a ton of offers that are just really lowballed.
Absolutely. And that's why I know that my seller's not going to move unless it's a 260. And so having this lower offer is it's frustrating. I was hoping we were going to move forward with you.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Oh, very.
Yeah. So you probably feel like if you're going to present an offer that occurs as lower than what the seller wants, that it's just going to really make you look silly, like you're not even doing your job.
Well, yeah, of course that would be my concern, is that I'm making that seller feel like their time is wasted because they need a specific number.
Yeah, they need a bottom line number that they're not going to delve from, and anything else is just going to be a waste of time.
That's the concern.
Okay. So bringing you anything less than the 260, I shouldn't even bother.
Yeah.
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 You're probably just going to think I'm another one of those stupid investors that are lowballing everything, and that you probably just want to, not even present it, even though you have a fiduciary duty.
That was a good response, Renee.
So we can kind of cut it right there, right? Because we're
The
not going to
F
go on.
word.
So I put in a lot of emotional intelligence techniques in there, right? But I'm hoping, I want to hear, not I hope, I want to hear how was that for you emotionally? And then maybe for people that are watching, to put in the chat, how was that for them? How did that make you feel?
So I generally struggle getting into like a more defensive, angry tone and place. So that was first the response. But it was interesting that your tone turned it down even harder for me, where it was hard to get there because your tone was toned down and I wanted to meet you there. So that's sort of the emotional reaction, as I just want to go with where you're headed because you were so stable with it. But then, of course, if you bring up the F word to any agent, it's going to make them go, whoa, because you said fiduciary responsibility. And I'm like, wait, I do have that in this scenario.
You can't not present it. Right. So you felt like you were heard, I'm assuming. And you felt like, did you feel like that there was an ally, there was, you felt heard, and even though you still consider me somebody who's a lowballing investor, that maybe, just maybe, there was a little bit of an opening that you were considering actually having a conversation with me?
Almost forced to, because you recognize the fact that I do have to present anything to my sellers.
Did you feel defensive though with that? I mean, did you feel like you had to because I said the F word, or did you feel like I was still an ally for you professionally?
I think your tone keeps it as ally professionally, for sure.
Okay. That's something to work on now. That's good. Because I was looking for an adjective, really, like how did that actually make you feel? So you were still sort of talking from a place of fact, logic, and reason, which is totally fine. That's what we do as human beings. So let me parlay it a little bit, and then you can come back to maybe how you felt. So really, emotional intelligence is in an inquiry, of what people are feeling, not so much what they're thinking, but what they're thinking and feeling. So it's both, right? You really want to train yourself to listen to that. And this is a training. Again, do not read the book and just assume that you know emotional intelligence. And it's not my opinion, but I'll tell a quick story that after COVID, when Chris came back, he usually gets an upgrade on airplanes and like an upgrade at the hotels every single time by utilizing his own version of emotional intelligence. And he was really rusty because for whatever it was, a year or so, he wasn't traveling. And even he himself says emotional intelligence is a perishable skill. So never think that you know all that you know about emotional intelligence. Even Chris himself said that he hadn't really utilized that particular technique, and it basically went away and it became perishable. And the first time out of the gate that he tried it after COVID was over, he didn't get the upgrade on the airplane and he didn't get the upgrade on the hotel. And it was an ego bruise. We could all see it on the camera. I mean, he was vulnerable enough to tell the story because he was making a point, but he's like, I am Chris Voss. Like, I wrote the book. I basically made this. And even I didn't get the upgrade. So if that doesn't humble you to let you know that it's a constant conversation, then, please take it seriously if you're going to take this on. All right. So one of the things that I really like that's in the book that emotional intelligence invites you to be, I don't want to say forces anything, but invites you to be is, where are you internally? So when you're communicating with people, aside from all the tactics, the labeling, the accusation audit, the tactical empathy, right? All that stuff, where are you internally? And the book doesn't talk about it, but I think that we've touched on it in here that doesn't necessarily get talked about enough, is where are you at in your day? How are you setting your morning? How are you being in the world? And thankfully, because I didn't grow up with this conversation, thankfully, this is more of a common conversation to a degree, or at least people are willing to have this conversation about who are they actually being in life. And you can say who you're being through an adjective. Today I'm being loving. Today I'm being kind, and maybe have a couple of words that anchor you for the day so that if you're loving and kind, the fact that you, Corianne, as a real estate agent in that moment had told me, basically I'm a jerk and, just like every other investor and, don't bring me anything less than 260 and about to hang up on me, that if I'm being, who am I being while I'm being in that space, that actually will anchor you more than anything. Now you start to apply the emotional intelligence, right? So I said, so one of the things I want to talk about is where are you internally and who are you being throughout the day while you're actually communicating with people? Because I assert that even though I've had the training and I still apply it and my voice was really calm, it's my commitment to who I'm being in the day. And this is way easier said than done, especially if you're not having a great day, and checking yourself throughout the day, because every phone call that we make is the next first phone call, if that makes sense, right? We might make 50 calls in the day, but you're not talking to one person 50 times. You're talking to 50 different people. So every time you're talking to that person, it's a new phone call. So who are you going to be while you're having that phone call and representing yourself to that while you apply quote unquote emotional intelligence? So be emotionally intelligent with yourself. And I believe that starts with who are you being from an internal state. So a slightly different conversation from, all this work here, and that's another conversation for another day. But I wanted to put that out there because I'm of the belief that if you are in a bad space and you start applying this, it's like lipstick on a pig, right? It's not as effective. And so in business, if we're looking to connect with people and be effective while we're connecting that with them, we only ever have so many shots. So you might as well be, internally stable, as you use that word, internally stable while you're communicating with people. So that's my little salt and pepper on top of, Chris Voss's emotional intelligence. I'm going to say this again, that people talk from fact, logic, and reason, but they make decisions from their emotions. So the whole idea about emotional intelligence is speaking to the emotion, because where we get into trouble, and we've just learned how to speak like this, where we get into trouble is it's like one-upism. We're always trying to be right. The next person's point is trying to be the next best point. So I could have said something to you like, well, I can't buy this house for less than, for more than 260 because I'm not going to make any money off of it. And there's no spread. And therefore, I can't put in an offer. Nobody cares. The favorite subject of everyone is themselves. So if I put myself over there with you, at least so that it diffuses. What happens is the words are actually, this is actual neuroscience, in my opinion. The words are actually hitting the brain such that you were on the defensive. Maybe you're not a defensive person, Corey Ann, but essentially you're on the defensive. You're pissed, you're annoyed. All the agents are calling, all the investors are calling with these lowball offers. That's every agent's plight, right? So if I know that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to meet you over there. I'm not coming in with my point. My point is valid. I need to buy the house for X because I need to make Y. But why am I going to essentially argue with you that point? You don't care. So remember, people speak from fact, logic, and reason, but they actually make decisions from emotions. So what we're doing now is speaking from an emotionally intelligent place so that you can meet people where they make decisions from their emotions.
Yeah.
So I really want that to land, because this is the undertone of what emotional intelligence is. I'm not here to just throw out tactic in this conversation. It's like really putting yourself in a headspace before, you start speaking from this place. So I call it being curiously engaged. I took another leadership program for a number of years, actually. And one of their methodologies, if you will, was called being curiously engaged. And so you want to be curiously engaged where that other person is, as well as listen behind what they're saying. So the frustration isn't necessarily the words that come out of somebody's mouth. It's the emotion behind what they're saying. So I'm reiterating some of the things again in my notes, but I really want to hit home on that, because everyone's favorite subject is themselves. And if you can meet people over there where they are, then you're going to have people feel heard. And when they feel heard, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, the defenses start to come down. Now you can actually have a conversation with somebody. Otherwise, you're just bunking each other in the head And then you're going to get what's called a counterfeit yes. I won't talk about that so much today. That's in the book. A counterfeit yes is like, yeah, I'll call you back. That's like, you're never going to hear from that person again. You don't want that. That's the worst yes you can get. You want a
Because you
committed
have to end
yes.
up in like a war of defensiveness, right? Like I'm thinking about me and my emotions and I'm defending that. You're thinking about you and your emotions and you're defending that. And if we just stay in a conversation doing that, we're really not moving anywhere. And I think so often the goal is, how do I align myself with you? So as we move down this conversation, we're actually both walking the same path.
And it takes a level of maturity to do this. I sometimes think that people say, oh, I read the book. And it's like they kind of know something. They might have been introduced to it. And I say, where are you in your life? That know thyself, right? So the more you know yourself, if someone's coming at you and they have a twang in their voice or whatever that sounds annoying, or you've been on your 50th person of the day and now that 50th person is still giving you attitude, right? The 50th agent of the day as a wholesaler, right? And they're giving you attitude and you don't want to hear it. You're more apt to be snappy with them. And so that's why I'm saying, check your internal state, because guys, I do it too. I mean, there's just sometimes I just went for a quick walk before I got on this call. Sometimes you just got to clear the air. Don't keep pushing. Find out where your boundaries are, what the self-care is that you need in the day, recalibrate and keep moving forward. And this language will help you while you do that. Yeah. So
that's huge.
One of the quotes that I like that was in the book, it's one of my favorite quotes, is, if you can't control your own emotions, how can you expect to influence the emotions of another party? I'm going to read that again. Oof. If you can't control your own emotions, how can you expect to influence the emotions of another party? So back to, this isn't just tactic, right? It's really being present to, where is somebody else who you are speaking with? Where are they? Yeah. And be that beacon, right? Because this has been a lot of training for me. It's because I wanted to. And it's not like I know anything, it's just training that I've had. And I can say this for myself because I've come off the rails even with all this training. And it's giving yourself that grace as a human being. And so giving people grace. And so in this instance, right, if the wholesalers out there are talking to agents and that's your primary prospecting, that you want to meet the agents where they are. Right now, there's a lot of change in the industry between the NAR stuff that's happening and essentially agents are thinking, what are they thinking and feeling? Okay, they're thinking and feeling that their commissions are at stake. If their commissions are at stake, their livelihood is at stake. If their livelihood is at stake, their safety is at stake. And then we go all the way to death. It feels like a death.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, just slumping right down to the bottom.
It goes right down to the bottom, right? So have some empathy and be emotional with that intelligence. And so right now is a really great time if you wanted to take this on, this type of languaging pattern in the way. Anytime's the great time, but right now, especially if you want to have a unique selling proposition in real estate, heed this call, learn this and practice it on a daily basis. There's no other bell and whistle that you can do out there, guaranteed. There's no AI, there's no new shiny object, there's no new nothing that is going to have the longevity of understanding how to talk to somebody in an emotional way. And guess what? It'll go on to all other equities of your life as well, not just real estate. But go ahead, you're going to say something.
Well, yeah, I'm curious because I run across this a lot. And honestly, it's one of the places where I'm like, what are they thinking? And maybe you can help me find where that emotional string might be. But I'm talking to agents who have a listing up for 60 plus days. The market has rejected their price. And often they don't want to talk about what the right price might be. And I honestly is probably the time I'm on the phone the shortest, where I'm like, okay, well, you do see the numbers in the data. And they're like, yeah, I see it. And I'm like, so that's where it'll sell. And they're like, yeah, I get it. And then and that's kind of the end of our convo, because I haven't been able to figure out how to emotionally resonate with somebody who's sitting on a listing that long at the wrong price. What do you think is going through their head?
The short answer is intent, because, the dirty secret is that agents will take overpriced listings just to put their sign in the yard and pick up all the other business from that sign call. And so if their intent is to never sell that property, then that's not a very professional intent, but it happens, because they know that, oh, well, it's overpriced, but maybe I have to appease my broker. Maybe I have to get a listing. Maybe, it's a little bit of an ego stroke, like, well, it's the only thing I have. So it is a listing. I can hold the open houses. I can pick up the sign calls. I can essentially make money off of this, somebody else's defiance, based on a number. And maybe there's that. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of leave it alone because I don't want to throw any agents under the bus, but it happens. In terms of engaging with that other person, you could certainly even just invite the conversation, like, hey, this might sound really uncomfortable, and you're probably going to think I'm a total jerk for asking that. That's an accusation audit. So we'll talk about that in a second. But you could probably, invite that. And one of the things that I'm just going to short answer you, because I'll keep on task here, and then we can talk about this a little bit later, is human beings love to correct. We like to correct people. So even if you say something that's not correct, people will correct you. And ultimately, that's the tell. So if you said something like, this, you're going to think I'm a total jerk. You probably feel like I'm every other investor out there. You're more than likely assuming I'm going to give you a lowball offer. Would you be opposed if we just had a conversation and I just asked you a couple of questions, like no harm, no foul, and invite them into it? And if they did, just say, you must think that this is going to, be a price that is not going to sell. This price, it won't sell at this price. Or you probably think that the market is ridiculous and they've all bringing you lowball offers. And so it just starts to engage in a conversation to where more or less people can start to correct you. No, well, it's not really the market, because certainly the agent's not going to fall on their own sword, even though they took an overpriced listing. No, it's not the market. It's all these investors that keep giving us these lowball offers. Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, they keep giving you all these lowball offers. Curious, what's going to happen if this doesn't sell? What are you going to do? I mean, I really care about your paycheck. Like, what are you going to do with this listing? How is this going to go? And just really start to engage. I mean, you can use it as practice. I think, if they start to give you a lot of resistance, a no means a no. Like, you might just not be able to get anywhere with that person in that particular conversation, but you could plant some seeds that will tell them, wow, this person was really listening to me. And then maybe follow up in a couple of days. Hey, I thought that conversation might have been a little harsh. I didn't want to come across as, stepping over my bounds, but I really like this property and I'd love to see you get paid. I mean, how can we work together on this? Where is the bottom line on this? Something of that nature. I'm kind of making this up as I go, but yeah.
Well, and it's not an easy question. Obviously, it's like there's no right answer to it. But what I love that you said that I just want to draw out and make sure that everybody's catching is that if it's their favorite subject is themselves, and you just said, you probably think this, then they know what their favorite subject themselves actually does think, and they want to jump in and correct. Like, that's so smart. Oh, well, yeah, you probably, think I'm only going to give a lowball offer and that I'm not worth much of your time, but I do just want to ask a few questions. Oh, well, if you are going to have an offer, I mean, let's talk, and it flips a switch somewhere in the brain that says, like, I'm going to start unloading. And when you brought that up, it brings me to, I know an agent, I've called an agent in this specific scenario, and I've implemented something similar just enough of a tinge to get this woman to talk for like 15 minutes straight about her true motivations, which was, she doesn't really care if it sells. She owns a 7-Eleven, and that's where she makes her money. And that's, like, no hate on anybody. Everybody's on their own scenario. And she might be the right listing agent for this particular seller because the seller doesn't want to move either. And it's like, okay, y'all can hang out over there. But it was just a little like, hey, here's what I think you're thinking. And then they just start unloading what it actually is.
Because either way, when you say that, it hits the brain. Back to neuroscience, it hits the brain. it's almost like it's happening. It's a knee jerk. It's happening before it's happening, because the way we're interpreting that is saying, no, that's not it, or yes, that is it. So either way, you'll get an answer. And either way, it's a bit of a tell. And either way, it's going to forward the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking for is to find out how that person is going to make the decision. And then I know there's the 4 pillars, and one is motivation. And so we are listening for motivation. What is the motivation? What's going to have this property sell or have an accepted offer? And at the end of the day, we all know that a pain point is really going to make people move. As human beings, when we're in some kind of painful situation, then we'll move. I don't know why we do that. I think the more mature thing is to know, again, back to know thyself, is to know thyself, and then not do that too many more times in your life, to where you don't have to be so arduous and life be so painful for you. But for whatever reason, we do that. We wait until we're sitting on the tack, and then we're like, got to get off the tack, right? Versus like, well, we just take the tack off the chair. Anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
it'll happen in real estate, especially. Like, if ever there's a time where there are a lot of people who are making decisions emotionally, I mean, you state that as like we're all making decisions always emotionally, and I agree.
Mhm.
And also, I'm like, heightened when you're changing your home and your environment and your space that you're trying to protect, which is down at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you're in that place, you're already in a very reactive, emotional space. And we as agents, we as investors are out there handling that. And we
Mhm.
need to be able to be in a place where we can be emotionally stable so that we can influence somebody else, and hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah, and guide. Yes, influence, and to a degree guide, right? Because at the end of the day, the buyer and the seller are going to make their own decisions. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. We're just kind of along for the ride professionally, but we are along for the ride. And
Mm.
so it's leaving that person empowered and heard no matter what their decision. And that is the level of emotional intelligence in all of it, for yourself, right? Because it's hard not to be attached. It's hard not to be attached to a paycheck. And yet we need to, I assert, required to be that Switzerland, to like kind of be neutral, right? And be that space so that our clients can be heard and they can make the most empowered decision, even if we're not in agreement. Because as I said, people's most important subject is themselves, and they're not necessarily hiring us for our opinions entirely. What they're hiring, you might think so, but what they're hiring for us for is really agreement reality. So if you're in disagreement to your client, then you better back it up with a space of being in some agreement with them, or you're really going to have a defensive. So people will always make their decisions, but they will ask the questions because the answer that they want to hear is they want it to be in agreement to what their answer is in their head. And if you're in disagreement to that, then you're not a match. You're more of a threat. That's called agreement reality.
Is that why we have so many listing agents that are putting things out there at the price that their seller wants without being willing to disagree that that's probably not the price it's going to sell at?
Probably. I mean, I'm not a mind reader, but
Yes, you are.
probably, that, and, here's some facts. Speaking of fact, logic, and reason. I mean,
Yeah.
fact is we're in a housing crisis. We've been in a housing crisis for, I don't know, 20 years. I mean, come on. KB Homes throws up something every now and again, or the big developers or whatever, but we have not kept up with the demand for some time. And so there's not enough listings. There's never been enough listings, at least in Los Angeles, at least in Southern California. They're coveted. And so if you're going to get a listing and you have a probability of picking up business from that listing, either be it another buyer or another listing, because the statistics are once a sign goes up in a neighborhood, statistically, another 2 or 3 signs go up around that listing. Maybe not next door neighbor, but the block down and down the way. Neighbors go for walks. Neighbors talk. Neighbors don't just look to the right and the left of their house. They walk around their neighborhood. All of a sudden they say two or 3 signs up. And if that person was on the fence, boom, up goes the sign. That has been a statistic for years. So back to, I got off the rails. that agents, smart agents or seasoned agents know that. And so they might just take a listing because they might get another listing in the neighborhood. It's a sad reality, but it's true. If we're in a housing crisis, and now more than ever, now more than ever, you're going to get paid if you have a listing that is not overpriced. But if it is overpriced, you have the probability of getting paid versus the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent. I mean, those of us that are seasoned, we hardly have any patience anymore for being a buyer's agent, let alone what's about to happen in July. So anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
I don't want to derail us too far,
yeah,
but
I'll get back on.
Are good subjects, because even for investors listening, right? I'm coming as a traditional wholesaler to the MLS where somebody just got a listing. It is overpriced from where I can pick it up or where it might sell due to condition, but I'm approaching with potentially the right numbers. If you're not thinking to yourself, oh yeah, there's a tight inventory here. And so a lot of retail buyers are willing to price themselves down and put some elbow grease into a home to build their own equity. You're missing what's going on in the market, and you need to take a step back and get to know your market a little bit better, because that is happening and it requires us to be aware of where we're actually adding value. Because I'm not going to approach somebody where if it can go, especially under FHA, but is just a little roughed up, but it could go under conventional and somebody could really just spend a few weekends to get it up to date. I'm going to be honest on that conversation and be like, hey, if you can sell this retail, I'm thumbs up. I'm really hoping a family with 2.5 kids can move in. If they can't, and your seller is in a pinch that needs to move quickly, I can get you a number, we can get closed quickly. That's where I add value. But I think so many people are out there on the phones wasting their time working just the MLS for that one deal when they're okay to sit on market until they get that retail buyer. And you just got to know what you're going after so you're not wasting your time.
Correct. So let's go. We'll get back on track. So let's talk about a couple of things. We're going to get into the book, so to speak. So tactical empathy. What is tactical empathy? If you have the book, and if you don't, you should get it, because as I said in the beginning, it's a study guide. So on page 52, tactical empathy, I'm just going to read it here instead of winging it. So tactical empathy is understanding the feelings and mindset of another in the moment, and also hearing, get this, also hearing what is behind those feelings, so you increase your influence in all the moments that follow. So I'm listening to you. That's what I did to you. I was tactically empathetic. I was listening behind what you were saying. And then this is the practice, is that you want to almost speak from a place of adjectives in a way. You want to speak like, you must feel like, you must think like. That's a label. Okay, so I'm going to parlay it into a label. That's a label. You're labeling what the person is saying. So it seems like, it sounds like, it feels like, it looks like. Those are labels. So labels are, you want to pick up on the person's emotional state, and you want to label and address the underlying emotions. So tactical empathy and labeling are kind of kissing cousins. So I'm actually saying it seems like, and it sounds like, and then the empathy, and I'm being tactically empathetic while I'm talking to you. So I'm utilizing tactical empathy while I'm applying a label, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So I'm utilizing tactical empathy while I'm applying the label. So a label is, from a practice standpoint, and we're going to leave the call with a little bit of homework. So a practice standpoint is, it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like, it feels like. And so you're really over there. Remember, people live over here. They live over here. This is where all our little friends live, over here, not in our heads, over here. So when we're being with people out here, we want to, we're just dancing. It's not fact. I might assert that you are feeling like you're frustrated, right? You want to, feeling like, adjective. That's the best way to do it. Feeling like, seems like, sounds like, looks like, feels like, adjective. That's the way to do it. And I have to think on the fly. This is the training. Ooh, this person kind of looks frustrated, or maybe they're annoyed. Become a bit of a wordsmith, broaden your vocabulary. And remember what I said is that people love to correct. So us over here applying the emotional intelligence, I implore you, you must actually have your defenses down in this instance, because if somebody corrects you, you're listening not for a correction to be corrected, but a correction because they're actually then going to tell you how they really are. So the whole idea of emotional intelligence is leaving open a dance to where that other person is heard, and you're just leading them. You're the lead in the dance. Right? And they're going to tell you how they actually are. So don't become defensive if somebody says, no, I'm not frustrated, I'm annoyed. Okay, that's how they feel. They're annoyed. Great, annoyed. Now you open that up, that conversation for that. So realistically, when you're applying this language pattern, it's a little bit of a guessing game. Remember, back to who are you being? Are you being open? Are you being communicative? Who are you being in the world, so that you can feel and sense how that other person is, and then utilize your words. And if that isn't the right word, so to speak, they will correct you either way, and be okay with it, and be curiously engaged. Remember what I said? Be engaged. Annoyed. Okay, they're not frustrated, they're annoyed, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going through this really, really quick. But page 52 is tactical empathy, and page 54 is actually labeling. So labeling, and I underlined this, labeling is a way of validating someone's emotion by acknowledging it. Give someone's emotion a name, and you identify how that person feels.
Interesting. Can I be devil's advocate here?
Yeah.
And maybe this is exactly what you're telling us to do.
It's a lot.
Move defenses. But every time I can think of using a label on somebody else, their reaction is pretty intense. Like, it sounds like you're pretty annoyed right now. And maybe that's even the tone I'm delivering it in. Yeah, I think of the times I use it seems like, it sounds like, and I wonder, I'm like obviously creating a very heavy response from somebody else. And then maybe I'm not in the place to receive that, and I'm ready to go for round 2 and be like, yeah, but you're really showing up annoyed, and you kind of like, I don't know.
It's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. There's a lot of practice here. Remember, in the times that I've heard people say to me, oh, I've read the book. It's like, I read the book and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think to myself, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not even trying to be right, because this is a constant practice, right? Okay. So without getting off too much of the rails, there's other stuff in the book, one of which is late night FM DJ voice. And so what you felt when I diffused is I dropped it an octave, so to speak. And so that's the late night FM DJ voice. That's the calm voice. So if I say, you really sound like you must be this is so frustrating, versus this is so frustrating. Now I sound like I'm frustrated, that I'm frustrated at you.
Yeah.
And so it's a practice. Now, when I say it's a practice, guys, I've been at this for whatever I said, 4 years. And I have had scripts partners. We don't love that word, scripts. Oh Lord, in real estate, don't make me learn a script. I'm just going to wing it because I'm a rebel and I know everything. But I've had a scripts partner for emotional intelligence for the last 4 years. And what we will do is call each other on the phone. It's very intentional. And I might isolate something like, hey, this person said this, right? And I want to go back to that moment in time and say, this is, please, you, Corianne, you're the annoyed person. You say this to me. And then Corianne, I'm going to say what I want to say in an emotionally intelligent way. And what we're doing is not only practicing, but you get to a point where really it's tonality and cadence. Right. So like, I kind of know what to say at this point, if you will, with just all the practice, the 10,000 hours, the 10,000 hours that I put in, if you will. But the craft is in the tonality. And so I don't know if that answered the question for you, but you may want to go back through the book, and then you can't just read, oh, late night FM DJ voice, I know how to do that. And then the minute somebody's frustrated with you, you're like, ah, crap, the ball's flying at my face and my racket is not available, and now I'm just going to say it with a tone, because it really is going to require you to take a beat. And the other thing is it's okay to just have a beat. If someone's coming at you in life and they're like, bah, 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 it's okay to just 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, you don't want to go dead silent on the phone because that's weird, but 1, 2, gather your thoughts, say to yourself, okay, late night FM DJ voice, and then drop into your heart, drop it. And then say what you're going to say. It's okay to do that. You don't have to, answer. In fact, not answering immediately is not controlling the conversation, but there's an element of control. You have self-control when you do that, when you don't immediately respond to somebody. Again, it hits the brain, right? So even if that person might be like, why the heck are they not responding to me? Because we're not one-upping each other. You're taking a minute to gather your thoughts so you can respond intelligently.
Yeah.
So that's a long answer, but maybe, consider all of that, because that's what's going on,
Well, and the voice and the tone of presentation, like you really can't show up with it seems like, or the labeling without recognizing like how that's being perceived on the other side. So I think that's a huge reminder that it is a practice to drop your tone. And I grew up in Kansas City, so I know like I can take myself to the radio station when I was younger, where she's like, Delilah. And so like I try to visualize Delilah as best as I can and bring those energies.
I love that.
It's a good reminder that I don't show up that way. I show up pretty highly energetic and I have a pretty tone sharp voice, and that's okay, unless I'm needing to show up with some empathy, some moments of that. So yeah, thank you for that reminder, and we can keep into what you got.
I love that. I know it's just a practice, and and I would highly encourage everyone to have a practice partner. And it's going to look messy and sloppy in the beginning, and none of us know what we're doing in the very beginning. But two things, and then I'm going to get back on track here because I know our time is winding down. The way I've practiced, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I did it in the very, very beginning. It was like Bart Simpson, if you ever watch The Simpsons in the beginning on the chalkboard, I would literally write out labels, seems like, sounds like, looks like, feels like, and then I would interject what I thought. I would make up scenarios in my head and I would interject that, and I would just write it out like Bart Simpson, because there's something about the human brain and how we learn tactically is that when you have a pen or pencil in your hand and you're writing something, we learn it. We viscerally kind of bring it into our body almost. I mean, this again is more neuroscience stuff in my opinion. It's out there. You can look it up. So I know it's different. It's different than typing it. When you're using your tactical, when you're doing this, it's different than when you're stroking a pen. It's very interesting, younger people. I don't even think they teach cursive anymore, I've heard. I don't have kids, but like, oh my God. So, I don't even know if people are like write that much anymore, so I'm saying literally take a piece of paper, write it out. And there is in the book, some, well,
got all my scribbles.
You're an old soul. Start writing it out, and then find yourself a partner and start practicing, the tonality. And that's how you get good. Because you can practice on people, but you also want to practice. I go back to Kobe Bryant a lot because I think he only ever had like 5 moves, something like that, 5, 10 moves, whatever it was. That's all the guy had. And he perfected them. And look where that got him in life. Okay. So just like none of us are above it. All right. Lastly, we're going to go to my favorite is accusation audit. So accusations audit quickly. Accusations audit is, in short, I'm not going to read it too much, is really like throwing yourself under the bus. So it's a little bit of humble pie, but it is so powerful when you're talking to people. An accusation audit is also calling out what people are actually thinking and feeling. Remember, you want to meet people what they're actually thinking and feeling, because they're making decisions from an emotional standpoint, even though they think fact, logic, and reason. They're making a decision from emotions. So an accusation audit might sound like, you must think that I am another agent that is going to send you a lowball offer and just embarrass the heck out of you and stop talking. Yeah. I mean, you just like, all of these investors are all the same. They just want something for nothing. And you're sick of it. You're sick of getting these phone calls. It's, what are they thinking? They're thinking investors are jerks. Guys, let's be real about it. They don't like working with investors. Don't be that person. Don't be that investor that they don't want to work with. Be that person where they're like, they do this number, they cock their head back. Like, dang, who's this person? Who's this Corianne that just called me? Wait, what? Like, who is this human being? She's saying lowball. She's a jerk because she's going to send me a lowball offer. Like, what? Now I'm going to lean in. Like, who is this person? Because that's what I'm thinking and feeling. So if you call out and you accuse, accusation, and then the audit is, we're auditing what that person is most likely thinking. So you're accusing yourself of something. This is the humble pie. And then you're doing an audit of it, right? Because in my mind, there's only ever so many thoughts that somebody's going to have, right? So in this case, the agent's going to think that the investor is going to lowball the offer. Forget that you need, you need it at a certain price. That's what they're thinking. So call it out. They're not thinking that you need to make, you need to buy it at, $220,000 and nobody's taking less than $260,000. They don't care. What they're thinking is, you're a jerk for not sending me a $260,000 offer. So let's call it out. Let's audit that. Now what you're doing is, you're not making yourself a jerk per se, but what you're doing is, you're getting all the elephants out of the way. You're getting all the elephants out of the room. Okay, now we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people are on the defensive. They're not actually listening to what you're saying. They're hearing the words. They're hearing like peanuts, like womp, 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 like the Peanuts cartoon. They're hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth. But what they're actually listening to is something defensive in their head. They're listening to, oh God, this is another investor that's just calling to waste my time and tell me that they're going to send a lowball offer. Meanwhile, you're justifying your price. So by using the accusations audits and talking about that at least clears the air. So now you and I can have a dance. Now you and I can have a conversation, a real mature, responsible conversation that might not lead anywhere, but it's certainly going to leave both of us more empowered and heard. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that is now communication. Being heard is not two people shouting at each other about what their points are. Being heard is being heard, and then agreeing to disagree. And maybe I can't put in an offer now, but I'm sure going to follow up. And if that seller is serious and they have enough pain points, they're going to sell at some point in the future. I don't care if it's 6 months from now. I'm going to be the one that will send you a realistic offer at that point, and you will have been left empowered. But all the while you were like, wow, that person, really like called it like it was. Like, they're no BS. I want to do business with people that are no BS. And most investors are BSers. That's what agents think. So call yourself to the mat on that. And that, in short, is an accusation audit. So lastly, and I see you've got questions, chomping at the bit here. What I would do as a homework assignment is what I had mentioned before, what I was doing all these years: pen, paper, whatever, pencil, pen, and an actual piece of paper. If you have the book, right, you could probably look it up on their site. But all the labels are actually in the book. There's only about 4 or 5 of them. Seems like, sounds like, looks like, feels like. And start putting in adjectives, so you have a bigger vocabulary for adjectives, particularly with people who might be feeling frustrated. Because at this point, if you're a wholesaler and you're calling agents and that's your primary prospecting technique, people are going to be frustrated. If you're doing direct to seller, they're even more frustrated. How much, they're getting mailed stuff and pay-per-click and door knockers and like, oh my God, get away from me. Right. So if you can bring some emotional intelligence to that conversation, imagine how you're going to stand out. And the same thing with the accusation audit, there's only ever so many objections, as we like to call them as real estate agents. So figure out what all those objections are. Oh, you're going to lowball me. Oh, you're never going to call me back. Something of that, like figure out what that is. What are the objections, and write them down, and then accuse yourself of what those would be, and practice that so you have a comfortability of it, because you do want to own that without being attached to it. Like, yeah, I know I am a jerky investor who's going to send you a low ball offer. Don't be weird about it when you say it. So own that. And that's going to come from the practice. So
that takes practice.
Bring us home. Was that of value? Was that of any value, or was that just a bunch of hot air?
Oh my goodness. I think if we just talked about the it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like, it feels like, that alone is allowing your brain to walk out of your mouth and ask, are we using the same words here? Like, are we thinking on the same page? Because I'm come from a more NLP, neuro-linguistic practitioner background, but they run the same exact track and race. And one of the things I think about is I don't use these labels very often. That it sounds like, it feels like, but you really want to dial that up. If somebody is coming with you with a lot of, I feel, I think, I feel, I'm going to respond with, so it feels like you're saying this. And I'm speaking their language if they're a feeler. Like if you're coming at me, if you say it looks like or it feels like, I'm going to resonate with that more than it sounds like, because I'm not an audio learner. So I just think that it's like such a tool in the tool belt that then can be utilized over and over again in different ways to just get deeper and deeper into creating the kinds of results that we want on the phone, which is to understand whether our motivation matches their motivation.
And listen, guys, take this out into the world, right? Be wherever you're at the grocery store, just running into a neighbor. It will also cause you to really lean in. You've got to listen. This isn't a passive thing, right? You're actually engaged. You're listening to what that person is saying. And if you choose to respond in this way, throw your voice down an octave, so that people feel calm and heard and safe, then see what the response is. You'll be shocked. I mean, I was just at Trader Joe's, which is, I think they're across the country now, which is, a little regional grocery store. And I always engage with the person that checks me out at the checkout counter. I'm not on my phone. I want to engage with them. And I'll often, at this point, it's almost like second nature, right? But if I'm really thinking about it and they look like they're having a bad day or something like that, I'll engage with them in an emotionally intelligent way, just like in the book, right? With some labels and maybe more tactical empathy. I'm not really doing an accusation audit at that point. I'm not throwing myself on the bus buying groceries, but I'll see what their reaction is. And I'm telling you this, and you'll feel it. Chris talks about this. It's a click. I can't describe it in any other way, but it's a click. When you engage with somebody in a communicative way and they really feel heard and safe, they will look at you. It's usually through their eyes, and they'll look at you like, who are you? Like, how did you just acknowledge me? When you acknowledge somebody, we're so rarely acknowledging each other. We all just want to shout and be heard and get likes, but when you actually drop into your heart and you communicate with somebody and you acknowledge them, it's really powerful, and it's powerful for them, and you'll feel it. And that's a beautiful exchange in the day. And it's so important. That's all we're really here to do, is to, kind of walk each other home, so to speak. So, when you do that and have people feel seen, it's so important. So thanks, everybody.
Oh, so many tips packed in this. I myself am going to rewind this. Thank you, Renee, for putting this together and bringing these really usable bite-sized tips. And so I hope everybody does just like I do. Get your pen and paper out, rewatch and re-listen for all of these things. But the main takeaway here is that you cannot approach the phones, no matter what you're trying to get out of it. You cannot approach it only with your motivation in mind. You're showing up to real people on the other side, and they really have emotions and needs and desires, and you've got to tap into that even over the phone. So we're wishing you guys a lot of luck throughout this week. Thank you for joining us on our 12th episode. We've officially hit a dozen.
Amazing.
Next, we're going to bring out one of our oldies. I think it's either the second or third episode. So we weren't quite as good at chatting at that time, but we really want to invite you in, even show all of our bloopers from the beginning. And that's going to be next Tuesday at 2. You can put us on your calendar. We're always going to be here Tuesday at 2. So you know you've got agents at your disposal. We're watching the comments. We really want to be here to help you guys, because when we say anything, we mean everything. We're going into mind, body, soul, business, all of it.
Beautiful. And we'll put that in there. It's 1 o'clock Pacific time and 2 Mountain time, just so people know that, but we'll have it, in the show notes. Anyway, thank you guys for letting me kind of semi-monopolize this. I do hope you got some value from it. Thank you for letting me teach, because I get to learn, when teaching. And so onward. I love it. Thanks, Corianne. I appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Be well. Bye.